afternoon, Your Highnesses, Excellencies, dignitaries, members of the ABLF network, and all of our wonderful guests today. My name is Resham Katecha. I'm a policy and strategy specialist based in the UK, and I'm delighted to be here with you at the ABLF. The woman I'm going to be speaking to today is an incredible and inspirational woman, Dr. Sangita Reddy. She is the president of the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industries and was also actively involved in the inception of the Apollo Hospitals Group, which she formally joined in 1983. She's currently the chairperson of Apollo Knowledge, which is the education vertical of the group, and is a member of the prestigious World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council on Digital Health, which aims to advance the use, adoption, and measurement of technology in health and healthcare, particularly focused on digital health. So Sangita, thank you so much for being here with us today. And a really topical question, as countries grapple with the second and third wave of the pandemic, what steps do you think governments and the private sector should take to speed up the journey towards economic recovery?
So first, good afternoon, and thank you for having me on this outstanding panel and a very, very great platform. I believe that the entire situation that the world has been through, such a challenging year, and I think an unprecedented, once in a multi-generation kind of crisis, and the health and the economic shocks which came from COVID-19 have really shaken the entire world and forced us to adopt and to adapt. So government steps. So government is an important leadership which impacts citizens and lives, with industry and industry bodies and chambers like FICCI being the intermediary between them. So I think the combined steps of ensuring that every life is saved. So whether that's adequate medicines, the right doctors and manpower, now acceleration of the permissions of the most scientific and appropriate vaccine methodologies to distribute this vaccine, taking a good prioritization list of the most vulnerable healthcare workers, and then enabling every citizen to get vaccinated. I think being a healthcare person myself, that would be the first thing. Moving to economic recovery, once we have a cure in sight, the positive impact this will have on the mood and the sentiment of people itself will be one of the biggest positives. But fiscal stimulus is really what people are looking at. The economic contraction, which was seen in the first year, has now begun. We're seeing the recovery. In India, we not only had a much improved second quarter, our first quarter was a minus 24% of GDP, never before in decades, but the second quarter was minus 7%. And now we're hopefully looking forward to a positive Q4 and a very sharp V-shaped recovery for the coming year. So for this, I think that it's a multitude of things. What the Indian government has done is tackle this from a first protect lives and then livelihoods. So the emergency guaranteed line of credit to small businesses to enable them to stay alive, so that a solvency problem or a cash flow problem doesn't become an overall solvency problem. So that was the big one. It was food in the hands of people. It was cash in the hands of the most vulnerable. So aspects like furlough and keeping families alive, I think is one of the most important. Then it goes on to economic recovery. So here, fiscal stimulus, which is planned, appropriately timed, and given in a smooth manner, is the next important one. And digital transformation is enabling this. Then the enabling laws to allow this. So whether it's allowing e-commerce to thrive and to flourish, because this is really the era of the contactless economy, very important to enable this to happen. And also, like in India again, the telemedicine law was enacted. So people who could not reach their doctor by going physically to a hospital were able to very quickly move online and talk to their doctors and keep their, get their medication using an e-commerce platform for pharmacies, which is, one of the things we saw tremendously happening at Apollo, which is my institution. So, thousands of teleconsults happening every day, and we were able to help them. We sent technicians home to collect samples. We delivered pharmacy. The next thing is really to look at this as an opportunity, which is clearly another thing which India has done. So macroeconomic reforms in terms of enhancing ease of doing business, enabling land, looking at labor laws, and now the most recent, which has been announced by our country, is the PLI, which is the production-linked incentive with a focus on manufacturing. Because as global supply chains shift, people are looking at a new home. And I truly believe that India is the new home for global business. And we look forward to inviting international businesses, foreign direct investments, venture capitalists to look at this. Because not only is there an easing up of the regulatory environment, there are positive incentives from the government. There's a very sincere, diligent, and well-educated middle class, and therefore there's a very good working class to translate what is required in terms of factories and businesses. And enabling this is what I think is the government's biggest role, while at the same time carefully steering this. One of the things that COVID has taught us is the importance of the environment and Mother Earth itself. So building sustainable businesses. And the other thing it's taught us is that in problems like this, it is the weakest and the most vulnerable who suffer the most, whether it is the impoverished or even women and children. So building an equitable society where women have a voice, where women are an equal part of business, all these are other important aspects that I think there is no time like the present for the government to focus on. And very honestly, I must add that I believe the Indian government has done a commendable job in steering our country through this incredible, unprecedented, no handbook available kind of environment of the COVID pandemic.
And you've touched on several elements already, whether it's women and children, whether it's inequality in societies or opportunities. I think we're in a pivotal position for governments around the world to really take stock of what they want to achieve for society in 2021. So what do you see as the key opportunities, but also the key challenges globally?
So I believe globally, one of the biggest things is really to keep homes intact, keep people fed and healthy, because one of the other aspects, the editor of Lancet actually said that while all of us are focusing on the pandemic, what we are facing is a syndemic. So you're seeing three things at the same time. You're seeing the devastating effects of COVID-19. You are parallelly faced with an underlying epidemic of non-communicable disease. And we all know that comorbidities made the impact of COVID even worse. So it's important for us to realize that the underlying epidemic of non-communicable disease must be tackled through creating a health intervention of early screening, detection and treatment, of lifestyle modification, of a wellness focus, and health checkups, which are so critical. And the third is an infodemic, because there is so much news and information out there. It is to be able to decipher the trusted brands, the credible source of information, so people are doing what is scientifically proven to be right. So if we look at these three, I think this will put us on a good step or a good path to recovery.
That's really interesting. Thank you. And Sangita, I want to pick up on your point. You've already touched on government intervention, but I wanted to ask you about central banks and their response to the economic crisis. Do you think the intervention central banks have made have had the desired impact during and post-pandemic?
So let me focus on the Indian bank. I think the Indian banks, largely driven by the very proactive and positive interventions of the RBI, which is the regulatory body in India, ensured, number one, that there was adequate liquidity. It ensured that the interest rates stayed down. It controlled the repo rate. It ensured that the banks were lending, and the government's terms of becoming a sovereign guarantor to the MSMEs or the small industries, that emergency loan facility was what was really transformational in keeping businesses alive. I think that the next phase of fiscal stimulus must yet again be driven by banks. So the ability to look at the next wave of economic recovery, to fund new businesses, to fund new age businesses, to bring startups into fore and ensure that venture capital. So when we say banks, I look at the entire spectrum of capital availability, whether it's a sovereign fund or a venture capital, or even an angel investor, and microfinance and multiple methods to distribute this funding appropriately. So the entire aspect of appropriate capital being available to fund the next phase of growth for economies of the world is a critical aspect that we should debate. And fiscal management, I think, is very, very important. In India, there is a clear methodology or a path which has been announced. Number one, to accelerate planned disinvestment programs to bring out new growth, to look at fiscal surplus which has been facilitated and to use that for infrastructure, which will then, every rupee spent in infrastructure enables almost 200 other downstream industries to get activated. So where this money is spent is, I think, another very important aspect. Another one which is being looked at by the government is to look at the non-core assets as well as strategic sales of public sector undertakings, but also to bring in privatization and to be able to look at assets very differently, whether it's in enhanced investment in the defense sector or enabling of international companies to get into the coal and coal mining. So in a range of initiatives that the government has brought forward, you will see India becoming, as I said earlier, the new home of global business.
Okay, and speaking of a home for global business, what measures do businesses need to take, in your view, to ensure the development of a more flexible and agile model that will support sustainable growth post-COVID?
So I think the first one is for growth itself. One of the biggest things which is happening is the overall adoption of digital. And, we spoke about mega trends earlier. This is now an era of not just mega trends, but teta trends. There are terabytes of knowledge coming in, and these terabytes of information need to be processed, analyzed using artificial intelligence, using machine learning, so that we build new models which enables business to grow and actually, if used appropriately, creates, as Peter Diamandis would say, an era of abundance for the world. So focusing on building the strengths of their company and of the allied assets that they have towards the new age of business, whether it's manufacturing 4.0, acute digital adoption, of course, equitable growth, the ability to involve women in business, all these are aspects while at the same time being environment friendly. So solar and alternate energy is a very big thrust that I believe everyone must look at. While at the same time, assets which are being built up, which are applicable a decade from now. And those, I think, are the introspection that businesses are undergoing, while also understanding the psyche of the customer. The customer has become extremely discerning. And companies with a heart, companies that they trust, are the companies that they will give their business to.
Absolutely. And I think your points about technology being such a key driver with great potential, if done in an equitable way, is really important. And I want to pick up on that because there's a real risk that technology only serves to exacerbate the difference between the haves and the have-nots, especially if you don't have access to that technology. So how can we, as nations, as societies, ensure that we don't have a left behind portion of society who are technologically detached or uninformed?
So Resham, I think that's a fantastic question and something very close to my heart. I believe at the core of that transformation and at the core of equitable growth is education. And an edu revolution which ensures that no one is left behind. An edu revolution which focuses on lifelong learning so that everyone can continue to upgrade their skills in this very fast changing world. And finally, government policy which empowers and brings to fore all sections of society. I think a combination of these really will lay the foundation of the multiple dimensions that the world is going to unfold. And in that, I see a new healthcare era where telehealth, telemedicine, remote ICU, telepathology, all these will become mainstream because, as is well said, what is today's miracles are tomorrow's routine practice. Similarly, if you look across the scope, children will go to school, of course, but so much of their learning will also happen digitally. And in this physical, digital evolved world, will become important aspects of experiential learning, value-based learning, the ability to work as teams, so that learning is not just individualistic, but it teaches you to work together in a team and build on society as a whole. So all these are new and powerful lessons, which I think we must focus on and reimagine this beautiful, equitable, sustainable world.
Absolutely, and I think that sounds like a really positive future. So with your work with the World Economic Forum, you do incredible things to advance the use, adoption and measurement of technology, both in health and healthcare. So what advice would you give to governments and leaders around the world with regard to encouraging the adoption of technology within healthcare specifically?
So, Resham, to begin with, I think my sister is on the World Economic Forum Health Council, but I have been on the Digital Council, and my team is now working on exciting projects with World Economic Forum, one of which is our drones project. In partnership with the Telangana government, we're looking at how we can create medical grade drones to deliver medicines, to transport organs, to bring blood where it's needed, to carry a defibrillator to an emergency accident site so we can save somebody's life. So these are exciting opportunities. And for that, I think the World Economic Forum has a very critical role to play in the central design of what are the standards of information and knowledge transfer. How do we capture? Is there a personal health record which encompasses? Are these standards, whether it's SNOMED or HL7, how are these being used and put together? Each one of these will be the foundation which will enable digital utilization to its optimal, whether it's in the use of drones or it's in the use of data and using artificial intelligence. One of the projects we've been working on with Microsoft and have brought to the fore is the creation of a risk modeling. And if you use this cardiac risk modeling, you will be able to pick up the signs of someone who has a greater risk of a heart attack far earlier and much before they get into that heart attack. So use of data and these models to help prevent difficult and adverse situations in healthcare and to help educate people to modify lifestyle and stay healthy is among one of the paradigm shifts which is happening in healthcare. And so, you know, I'm privileged to work in these areas. I'm excited to work in them. And I offer a broad reaching partnership to anyone who is interested to reach out and find ways for us to do this together, because I genuinely believe that if we all work together towards this positive pro-health environment, we will bring down the burden of disease and ensure that everyone has universal health access.
Well, fingers crossed you get lots of people reaching out to you after that statement. I mean, there are so many exciting applications when it comes to big data and AI in healthcare. Could you share some more other than the heart attack example you've just given?
So I think one of the biggest things that the world is facing is a shortage of healthcare workers. Mm-hmm. And if you combine the ability to do digital and e-learning so that we can train quickly, and during the pandemic, we created a ventilator training program. And so we took the content of the learning of how a ventilator works and what they should know. We put in a simulation engine so they could do the settings and know if they were right or wrong. And then we did a buddy system so that a critical care medicine person was buddied on the mobile phone along with someone who's a first-time user of a ventilator. Wow. And normally this would not be the perfect way to do it, but in a pandemic when so many adverse conditions, this saved many lives. But using technology in training, enabling the use of risk score models and what we call the clinical decision support system. So if you put a CDSS in the hands of every nurse and every general practitioner, they will be able to operate at a level higher than their current skill level and enhance their care, and thereby bring down the problems which happen due to a shortage of healthcare workers. I'm not going to the, super advanced ones, which will happen as well, that you will have a robot giving home care. But you may have robotic assist enabling a lower skilled person, or a technology assist enabling a lower skilled person to assist somebody at home while being tele-managed by an advanced doctor or a nurse. So these kind of hybrid models will open up very quickly. And we are already doing these at Apollo, because in India, what we need to do is find ways to bring the highest quality care, but at most cost effectively. And so technology actually, typically we always thought of technology like high-end CT scans and MRIs, which pushed up the cost of healthcare. But this type of technology brings down the cost of healthcare, because you allow people with lower skill to operate at a higher skill level and enable reach to go to more people. So I'm excited about these kind of uses of technology and of sharing these skill sets and capabilities with other countries who are in need.
And talking about other countries in need, because you've given us a lot of really fascinating insights into India specifically, how do you see healthcare needs evolving across Asia or globally, even with such different issues at hand?
I think right now, Resham, no one has time to think of anything more than getting the vaccine. So rolling that out, whether it was, Pfizer's very interesting announcement about the methodology of storage, the time cycle between developing of antibodies, that it will take 2 to 3 weeks to develop antibodies, and you need to have your second dose within a time frame. All these are occupying the minds of people. However, bringing our hospitals back into optimal operation, going back and picking up any of the lag in terms of vaccination of children, because even that has fallen behind, patients who have blood pressure issues or are on dialysis, bringing them back into the healthcare system and bringing them up to optimal health. There's a whole lot of things which are facing healthcare administrators and governments across the world. So my simple message is to all patients, find a way to stay safe. To societies, please practice social distancing, masks and sanitizing till you get the vaccine. Keep your environment safe so that the routine patients who need healthcare are able to access those beds and those healthcare workers. And definitely to countries across the world, you must not just flatten the curve, but bend the curve all the way down, ensure it does not spread till the vaccine, which are tremendous, our scientists all over the world. We must commend them in the same breath as we commend the healthcare workers for giving us an ability to survive in what has been a nightmare, and then having hope and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully the end of 20 and the beginning of 2021. Let's step into that year with hope, with some lessons well learned about an equitable, sustainable world where humanity and caring for each other is far more important than anything else.
Sangita, what a lovely way to wrap up the session. I don't think we could have ended with a better statement for hope for next year. So thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. To everybody who's been watching, you can post on our live social media wall with the hashtag ABLFCity. Please don't forget to visit the Partner Expo or to head over to the Networking Lounge and join the chat to connect with others. Remember that if you missed a part of this session or any of the sessions run today or in previous ABLF sessions, you can come right back and watch them on demand anytime after today. Thank you for joining us today, and remember that we are back every month featuring global leaders in powerful conversations. Thank you.